think of the First Crusade, we usually picture a holy war, right? An epic clash of civilizations driven by pure faith. But what if I told you it was also one of the shrewdest political power plays of the entire Middle Ages? Today, we're digging into how the First Crusade was, in many ways, a calculated political masterstroke.
So, here's the mystery we need to solve. In 1074, a pope tries to launch an armed expedition to the east, and it's a total flop. We're talking crickets. Then, just 21 years later, another pope makes a similar call, and bam, the First Crusade kicks off, mobilizing tens of thousands. So what on earth changed? Why did one call fail so spectacularly, while the other literally set a continent on fire? That's the question we're answering.
All right, to get to the bottom of this, we've got to look at our two main characters, Pope Gregory VII and Pope Urban II. Their stories are key because to understand why one succeeded and the other failed, you have to understand the completely different political worlds they were living in. Let's rewind to 1074, to Pope Gregory's big idea. I mean, historical sources show he was definitely thinking about sending aid to Christians in the East. He even talked about leading an army himself. But the whole thing just fizzled out. It never got off the ground. The political will just wasn't there. And to figure out why, we need to take a hard look at the state of the papacy back then.
So, what was Gregory's world actually like? Well, forget any image you have of a powerful, globe-spanning institution. In the mid-11th century, the papacy was, well, it was weak. It was a regional player at best. You could even say it was an institution in chains.
I mean, check out this definition from a historian. It puts it perfectly. The papal office was, and I'm quoting here, scarcely more than a localized bishopric. Think about that. The Pope was basically just the Bishop of Rome, and the job itself was like a political football being tossed around by powerful local families. He had almost zero influence outside his own backyard in central Italy.
And if you want to know just how weak the Pope was, get this. In 1046, the Holy Roman Empire, the biggest fish in the European pond, he just marches his army down to Rome, tells the current pope he's fired, and puts his own guy on the throne. Just like that. There was no real separation of church and state. The state was calling all the shots.
Okay, so this is the world Pope Gregory VII steps into. Now, Gregory was a huge reformer. He wanted to change everything. But here's the thing, instead of being able to focus on big projects like a holy war in the East, his entire time as Pope was completely swallowed up by this gigantic power struggle right there in Europe. And this slide really gets to the heart of Gregory's problem. On one side, you've got his ambition, right? Let's launch an expedition to help Eastern Christians. But on the other side, you have his reality. He's stuck in a nasty political war with the new emperor, Henry IV, over who actually runs the church. This whole fight was called the Investiture Controversy, and it was a battle for the very soul of the papacy. And this fight was absolutely all-consuming. In 1075, Gregory says, "No more kings appointing bishops." The emperor says, "Try and stop me." So in 1076, Gregory does the unthinkable. He excommunicates and deposes the most powerful ruler in Europe. I mean, this was a massive power play. It all comes to a head at Canossa, where the emperor literally has to stand barefoot in the snow for 3 days, begging for forgiveness. So you can see all of Gregory's attention, his money, his political energy, it was all tied up here. He had nothing left in the tank for a war halfway across the world. But then, in those 20-odd years between Gregory's failure and Urban's success, something huge happened. A quiet but profound political revolution took place inside the church itself, and it completely remade the papacy from the inside out. And this wasn't just random luck. It was a carefully planned, systematic overhaul. You can think of it as a 3-step program. Step 1, free the office. In 1059, they created the College of Cardinals. This was huge because it took the power to pick the next pope away from emperors and kings. Step 2, consolidate power. They started cleaning house, cracking down on corruption, and enforcing discipline. And finally, step 3, build an international team. They started appointing reform-minded leaders from all over Europe to make sure this revolution would stick. So what was the result of all this? After about 50 years of these reforms, you have a totally new kind of papacy. By the 1090s, the Pope isn't just some local bishop anymore. No, he is the powerful, independent head of a massive international organization, with the authority to command kings and knights all across the continent. And it's into this brand new world that Pope Urban II steps. Now, Urban was a product of this revolution. He was a savvy politician who inherited this newly empowered papacy. So when a cry for help came from the East, he didn't just see a problem, he saw a golden political opportunity. And this was the spark. The Byzantine emperor sends a message west, basically saying, hey, we're getting hammered by the Seljuk Turks. Can you send some soldiers? Now remember, for a pope like Gregory, a message like this was a distraction he couldn't afford. But for Urban, it was the perfect stage to show off the papacy's newfound muscle. And this is where we see Urban's political brilliance in full display. As this analysis puts it, he saw the crusade as a manifestation of papal leadership. His main goal wasn't just to help the Byzantines, or even just to retake Jerusalem. No, his primary goal was to prove once and for all that the Pope was the true leader of all Christian society. The crusade was the ultimate PR move, a public demonstration of papal power. Just think about all the political boxes this ticked for him. By launching this massive undertaking, Urban could unite all of Europe's bickering knights under his command. He could point all their violent energy outwards away from home where they were causing trouble. And, this is the kicker, he could completely sideline his biggest rival, the Holy Roman Emperor, by proving that only the Pope could pull off something this huge. It was, politically speaking, a checkmate.
All right, so let's tie this all together and get back to that first question. What was the real difference between 1074 and 1095? It really all boils down to this. In 1074, you've got Pope Gregory VII trying to run a weak, pre-reformed papacy while he's stuck in a brutal internal fight with the emperor. Of course his expedition was going to fail. But fast forward to 1095 and you have Pope Urban II leading a powerful, reformed papacy. He was able to use an external crisis as a political tool to solidify his own authority. The game changer wasn't the threat in the East, it was the incredible new power of the papacy in the West. So, the First Crusade, it wasn't some random accident of history. It was the direct result of a 50-year political revolution that transformed the church from a puppet of emperors into the master of Christendom. And that leaves us with one last thing to chew on. If the most famous holy war in history was kicked off in large part as a political power play, how does that change the way we look at everything that came after? The next 2 centuries of crusading, the constant battle between church and state, and really the whole idea of power in the medieval world.